In the second lesson of Section 4 in Unit 7, we are going to learn about sample space and how to create a sample space for the occurrence of two independent events. Neatness and organization will be important here. The use of a straight edge is strongly encouraged. Recall, we have learned that independent events do not influence each other. The occurrence of one event does not have an impact on the chance of the other event occurring. Let's have a look at the idea of a sample space. In a what we will call random experiment, the sample space includes all of the possible outcomes. We will examine the sample space for two independent events. A sample space can be organized or visualized using a vertical tree diagram, a horizontal tree diagram, a table, a fishbone organizer, and so on. For us, we will mainly be using a horizontal tree diagram or a table. So how do we construct our sample space? Here are two events. Event 1 is the rolling of a six-sided die, and event 2, the flipping of a coin. What are all of the possible outcomes? In other words, determine the sample space. And you could probably sit back and think about all of the possible outcomes in your head. The idea here is that we organize this using a visual. The first visual that we're going to look at is the vertical tree diagram. We know, of course, that a tree is made up of branches. At the top of our tree, we are going to have 6 branches. Why 6? Our event 1 is rolling a six-sided die. So for the die, we have 6 possible outcomes, each outcome corresponding to a branch on the tree. For our second event, we have the flipping of a coin. From each possible outcome from event 1, we have 2 branches. And for the coin, we have a heads or tails possibility each time. We see here how neatly this is organized. And from this, we can now get all of our possible outcomes. To record all of these possible outcomes, I'm going to start with the possibility of rolling a 1 and flipping heads. I copy down 1 and H to represent 1 and heads. Then I could roll a 1 and get tails, 1 and a T, and I will put a comma in between each of my outcomes. 2 and heads, 2 and tails. I could roll a 3 and get heads, or I could roll a 3 and get tails. Roll a 4 and heads, roll a 4 and tails. Roll a 5 and heads, or roll a 5 and tails. Roll a 6 and get heads, or roll a 6 and get tails. And there we have it, our sample space, all of the possible outcomes neatly organized. As a point of interest, if you count all of the possible outcomes, there are 12. Let's consider the same 2 events, only now we will organize using a horizontal tree diagram. Same idea, only we start from the left. I have 6 branches to represent the 6 possibilities for my die. From each of those, I extend 2 branches for my coin and representing heads and tails. Then we can list our outcomes as before. Obviously, they will be the same. 1 and heads, 1 and tails. This time I don't need a comma in between them because I'm going vertical. Then I have rolling a 2 getting heads, rolling a 2 getting tails. A 3 and heads, a 3 and tails. A 4 and heads, rolling a 4 and getting tails. 5 and heads, 5 and tails. 6 and heads, and finally 6 and tails. All of our outcomes generated in a nice, neat manner. The third visual we will consider is the table. And in my table, I have put the coin possibilities at the top and the die possibilities on the left-hand side. We match it up. 1 and heads, 1 and tails. And we can fill out our chart accordingly. 5 and tails, 6 and tails. The table is indeed a nice, neat, compact way to organize the sample space. And the other visual that was mentioned, and we will only use this one once, but it is kind of cool, it's the fishbone organizer. You see the two independent events where the head of the fish would be, 6-sided die and a coin. We're going to put some bones on this fish. For the 6-sided die, I'm going to put 6 main bones and label them 1 to 6. Then attached to those, I'm going to put 2 bones to represent the heads and tails. We put in the remaining bones for the other possibilities. We can now list all of our possible outcomes. Rolling a 1, flipping heads. Comma, rolling a 1, flipping tails. And proceed through all of our possible outcomes once again. 12 outcomes. Here's another example. This time we're being told to use a horizontal tree diagram and a table to determine the sample space for spinning a 5-colored spinner and rolling a tetrahedron labeled 1 to 4. The colors on our spinner are red, blue, yellow, pink, and green. Our first event is the spinning of the 5-colored spinner. For our horizontal tree diagram, we want to start off with 5 branches for the 5 possible colors. Red, blue, yellow, pink, and green. And I've just used the first letter here. There's no repetition of a letter, so it keeps it organized nicely. For the second event, which would be the rolling of the tetrahedron, we have 4 different possibilities. We could roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4. From each of the colors, then, I require 4 branches. And we put in 1, 2, 3, and 4 next to those branches. From this, we get our outcomes. I will start at the top. I have a red, and I could roll a 1, R1. I could have a red and roll a 2, R2. And very quickly, you should see how this works. So those are my 4 possibilities for spinning red and one of the 4 numbers on the tetrahedron. And then we do the same thing with our other colors. If I spin a green color and roll a 1, or a green and roll a 2, spin green, roll 3, or spin green and roll 4. All of those outcomes represent my sample space. There are, by the way, if you count them up, 20 possibilities there, 20 possible outcomes. We have constructed the horizontal tree diagram for this example. Now we will look at our table for our 5-colored spinner and our tetrahedron. Here is my table. At the top, I've put the possibilities for the tetrahedron, the 1, 2, 3, 4. And for the spinner, I have put the colors red, blue, yellow, pink, green. Now it's just a matter of filling in the table. R1, R2, R3, R4. Then blue, we could have blue 1, blue 2, blue 3, blue 4. Yellow possibilities, Y1, Y2, Y3, Y4. Pink, P1, P2, P3, P4. And of course green, G1, G2, green 3. And I could spin a green and roll a 4. Please proceed now to the activities for Lesson 2, where you will get the chance to draw some of these sample spaces.